Welcome to our Saturday Simulcast, joined by Tom Dienhart and Brian Neubert. I'm Alan Karpick, goldenblack.com. We want to thank the Union Club Hotel, and we will be having appearances for our Thursday Night Live, though it actually will be Wednesday, I believe, the night before the Penn State game. We can coax Tom into joining me down at the whiskey room at the Boiler Up Bar. We'll be doing that, but also I think we have another date scheduled for November, and then Brian and I will do a basketball show at some time, probably in February. I know that'll be the highlight of your media careers for both of you, but we appreciate the Union Club and all that they're doing with us, and we appreciate their role as sponsor. So, guys. Tom, it's finally here, or getting here at least. All this talk about NIL and collectives and all this has all been noise, but we are going to have football season with real football discussion, and obviously that starts next Wednesday for Purdue, this coming Wednesday, I should say, the second day of Big Ten Media Day. You've covered a lot of these in the past and been around with it. Just your thoughts going in, and maybe the questions about Purdue football, but maybe when you sit across from Jeff Brom, what will be some of the top of mind awareness things that you're going to try to get from Purdue's coach?
Yeah, the thing kicks off on Tuesday, 7 teams Tuesday. Like you said, Alan, Purdue goes on Wednesday. That's their 7-team allotment. And I think, Brian's talking about this, some of the things he's written. I think we all can anticipate what some of the hot topics are going to be, right? There'll be a lot of national interest on getting Commissioner Kevin Warren's spin on a number of things, right? Mainly, I guess, conference realignment. And so he'll be peppered with questions. And, of course, I'm sure some transfer portal will come up with some of the new developments on that front. Now, guys, there's talk of allowing players to transfer as many times as they want without.
Heard that.
So on and on it goes. NIL, like you said, is going to be a topic too. So those would be some of the, I guess, broad stroke overarching storylines that I'm sure are going to get hammered to death. And then, dropping down to lower levels, team by team, of course, Purdue, it's kind of an interesting team this year. I guess I'm overly optimistic, but I found people that are pessimistic. And I guess if you look hard enough, you can find potentially fatal flaws. But I think this could be one of Jeff Brom's better teams. There are questions to address, and there's some key ones too, right, guys? Brian talked about those too in something this week. Who's going to be that alpha wide receiver? Do they have somebody who can take the top off of defense with no David Bell or Milton Wright? How's that offensive line going to look? That's an annual question, right? And then the defensive line too. There's a lot of talent, but are there any difference makers, right? I don't think there's any Karlaftis. We can all agree on that. But who's going to be the guy who brings the heat, or the guys who bring the heat? So those are some key questions I think Jeff Brom will certainly be asked. Of course, in addition to Jeff Brom being there, Jalen Graham, the linebacker, will be present. Aiden O'Connell and Payne Durham will be the 3 players representing Purdue, guys. No shock there, right? I think Jalen Graham is probably the best. He's the best pro prospect on the team. And Aiden O'Connell, right? He's squarely in the crosshairs as a guy who starting to get a little bit of a national profile. He's on everybody's radar, and it's going to be fun to see what he can do this year in that offense, knowing he is the guy.
Yeah, it is going to be interesting on drilling down and seeing what. And there's always seems to be a surprise or something, a roster move that you may not anticipate that maybe the coach will make public as well. I mean, Brock Thompson being an example, not a roster move, but what's his health, whether he's going to be ready. All those kind of questions I would think would come to the fore.
Yeah, I guess maybe something like that will crop up. It will be big news, I think. I don't anticipate any earth shaking. So yeah, you never know, right? I'm just trying to think personnel wise, they're pretty well set. They had the late attrition here of Samson James a couple of weeks ago, but we're sort of to believe. I think we feel pretty good that they're not going to add anybody else to try to replace Samson James. They're going to ride with the group of running backs they've got, and I've started to roll out on the website just some real quick, kind of fun training camp previews, and the running back one's coming up. And Kobe Lewis, the kid from Central Michigan, the transfer, he's a guy I'm really eager to get a look at, right? I think there's a chance he could end up maybe being your number one running back at some point, if not right out of camp, maybe by the end of September. Who knows? It's going to be fun watching him and then King Daru battle it out there. Dylan Downing's back as well. So, and then Tyrone Tracy, how he's going to be used, right? We know he's going to catch passes. How much and how big of a factor is he going to be carrying the ball? He's going to be fun too. And then lastly, guys, Charlie Jones. Maybe that's the one kid who has as many people excited as any newcomer, right? The Iowa wide receiver return man. Boy, what he could mean to this offense, right, guys? I think he was really intrigued with the chance to play in this offense, to catch passes. And we all know what his return skills are like. And he could be a heck of a diamond in the rough, if you will, for Purdue, coming this fall.
Yeah. Brian, we gave you two questions for Tom because we know you're still coming off.
Oh, I'm fine. Don't worry about me.
No, I know that. No, I mean, but the whole COVID front, and glad that you're healthy, and hope that everybody in your sphere is getting that way. But
COVID brain fog is actually a step up from my normal state. So
that's me too. I think with my
it's actually a net gain, I think.
Yeah, but you look at me.
I guess from Brian's standpoint, I mean, I never really heard your thoughts on how good you think this Purdue team can be this year.
Oh, I thought that was going to be a COVID question. I want to know they have to score to win. I think we can all agree on that. And I think Milton Wright, really had a golden opportunity here this year. And I think if they had that one guy who was a clear-cut number one receiver, I'd be a lot more, confident in their ability to go out there and, throw for 300, 325 yards every single game and put 35 points on the board. I also think having that guy has always, helped the running game, has helped the tight end. And when you're on paper right now, your best receiving threat is probably your tight end. And if you don't have those guys putting pressure on the defense on the perimeter, I guess there's only one perimeter, that inextricably affects the spacing over the middle of the field for Payne Durham. That, it's just, that's my biggest question with this team. As much as I think they have to continue their trajectory defensively. I'm not as curious about that as I am offensively. I think your best chance to win is Aiden O'Connell going out there and throwing the ball 3 out of every 4 downs or whatever it might be, throwing the ball down the field. But the biggest question for me is, who is that guy? Who is that guy who, people really have to worry about, who open everything up for everyone else? I think they got a lot of talent at wide receiver. It's just a lot of those younger guys, that were part of that really impressive recruiting run Purdue had. They've not really done much yet. And a lot of them haven't stayed healthy. Yeah. If a TJ Sheffield or a Mershawn Rice or Abdul-Rahman Yassin, one of those guys, if they could get out there and they can, capitalize on that promise they brought to Purdue with them. They've not really had the chance to do that yet because the depth chart hasn't required them to, and they haven't been able to stay on the field. That's just bad luck. Or if a Brock Thompson blows up, or if a Tyrone Tracy blows up, or a Charlie Jones blows up, kind of something like that. But that's my biggest question with this team. I don't see any reason why they can't win just as many games this year as they did last year. Personally, even without David Bell, even without George Karlaftis, I think the schedule is compatible with that level of success. But I think they have to show they've got the same sort of offensive firepower they've had in years past, because when Purdue's been successful under Jeff Brom, it's been because of their offense. It's been because of their vertical passing game largely. And things like that. That's my biggest question, but I don't see any reason why they can't be just as good this year as they were last year.
Yeah.
And you look at the schedule, and again, that's going to be a narrative that even though, and Tom, you outlined the games that were the linchpin games on the site, it's, I can't imagine, I can't think of an opener in decades that is going to be more important than September 1st, the night of September 1st when Penn State.
Well, it was just a couple of years ago. I remember they opened against Northwestern, and they put a lot of emphasis on that. I remember Brom in Chicago at Media Day talking about that game and how important it was, and how important it was for them to get off to a good start. I think this one is probably even more important than that one, because you're in that same position again, but Penn State's a little bit of a different animal too.
Yeah, no doubt. I think, the Rondale Moore's debut and that setting, what it was at the, he almost set the all-purpose yardage mark in the first half of that game, but still Purdue lost, and against the Northwestern team that I believe, and Tom, correct me if I'm wrong, or Brian, that went on to win the Big Ten that year. But again, that's where it's going to be. You're right. You got a big brand coming in here on the first game of the year. That's what's going to be interesting. Tom, one question I have is looking at, okay, you go back to and this is the naive person asking this question, but you'll go back to the Music City Bowl, and I know Tennessee's defense was what it was, but how much do you take into the fact that a Brock Thompson and a bunch of no-name guys, no Milton Wright, no David Bell, did step forward? Was that a one-off? Do you think that will give all these other defensive coordinators look at that and say, well, we know that personnel is not probably as good on paper as it was last year? That's probably obvious. I mean, how do you view that? Is it can you just flip the switch and still throw for 500 yards if you've got Aiden O'Connell, who threw 2 interceptions in that game too and still had a great game? How do you view that?
I think I think Purdue can be as successful, if not as successful, darn close to it as they were last year, even without Wright and Bell. And I think that Music City Bowl, gave us at least a glimpse of the possibilities, right? Purdue really had no pressure on them that game.
That helped.
Still, it was a nice performance. And again, the tip of the hat to what the offense can be without their 2 best wide receivers. Brian talked about keeping those guys healthy. If we finally get a full-blown Mershawn Rice and a TJ Sheffield and a Abdul-Rahman Yassin, if Brock Thompson stays healthy, he could be your alpha. And then the young guy, Deion Burks, really intrigues me a lot. We saw a little bit of him in that bowl game.
Yeah, unbelievable.
Nashville. And I think Preston Terrell may be still a year away. I know they kind of like the kid from Auburn, Elijah Canyon. He's a 6'4" guy, the biggest receiver they've got. He kind of gives you a different dimension who can maybe work his way in. Is Colin Sullivan, guys? Is he a guy that's going to finally make a move? He got on the field a little bit in Nashville too. So and then we of course Charlie Jones and Tyrone Tracy. So boy, it seems like a deep room, doesn't it? And there's a lot of options there. And is there an All-American? Probably not. But I think with Aiden O'Connell throwing the football and with those tight ends, I think there may be enough there to make the collective pretty effective in throwing the football. And like I said, maybe this Kobe Lewis kid from Central Michigan, he's not Herschel Walker, but, he has rushed for 1,000 yards in a season. He's coming off an injury, didn't play last year, but I think he's motivated because of that too. He sees great opportunity. And you couple that opportunity with what I perceive to be his self-motivation, and there's a chance where he can maybe make this run game even a little bit more effective. And of course, if that happens, guys, that certainly is going to benefit Aiden O'Connell throwing the football, right?
Yeah. Brian, I want to get your opinion, Tom, too. Come back to you on you used the word collective in a non NIL. That's pretty impressive, Tom. That was good, but that was possible.
Unintended.
But my question is on Aiden O'Connell, who's a very mature. He's a 6-year guy. I mean, he's a walk-on that has done. It's an amazing story that he made it to where he is, and I think Brian wrote the story back when he was a just like his second year about that this is guys to keep an eye on. My question is, here's Aiden O'Connell's schedule. On Friday night this week, he had a golf outing and this was not an NIL event, but they have some best ball with he and Austin Burton doing playing with two Purdue golf guys. He's getting married at late next week. And he's done some events, and yet he's a very focused guy. Do you have, Brian? I'll start with you. Any, just in the world of NIL and focus and all those kinds of things. Do you see these guys flipping the switch back to 100% football? And maybe Aiden O'Connell's not a good example because he seems to be a pretty mature guy. But how do you see all that playing out and this new world of some of this stuff? What impact, if any, will it play once the lights get turned on, once the pads get started with practice?
Yeah, I think it's going to be different for every kid. The one thing that's always struck me about Aiden O'Connell is he has a really, strong foundation. He seems like a pretty level guy, and I don't think he's gonna walk out in the fall thinking all of a sudden he's Patrick Mahomes or something like that. Yeah. I think the one thing, name, image, likeness, and just the sheer demands of like college football stardom nowadays, that just comes with the territory. That's a good problem to have. Rondell Moore a few years ago was like showing up at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway for events, and he had a banner in downtown Indianapolis. Drew Brees' summer was a full-time job, basically. I mean, his full-time job was being Drew Brees. And I think those guys, you saw that, they were able to handle it. I wouldn't anticipate. I don't think Aiden O'Connell is the sort of guy who's conditioned to necessarily be a star. I think he's kind of living a charmed life here to a certain extent. I do think it's time for people, to stop viewing him as a walk-on, because I think there comes a point in time where that story flips from this kid overachieved to college coaches screwed up in the first place.
Yeah.
But I think that I don't anticipate, I don't know Aiden O'Connell personally, but he's never struck me as anybody who's going to go out there full of himself or somebody who's not able to kind of compartmentalize things. God, I almost botched that word. Compartmentalize things and focus on what he needs to be focused on. But this is going to be one of the broad challenges of this era where college athletes are more professionalized than ever before, because there are going to be a lot of demands on their time. There are going to be a lot more distractions. There are going to be a lot more things to consider in terms of what you got going on off the field, off the court, whatever it might be. I don't anticipate it being a problem for Aiden O'Connell, but there are going to be guys in college football and college basketball who kind of struggle with this, get distracted, start to worry about things other than what is directly important relative to what they're, kind of doing competitively and academically and so on and so forth. I'd be astonished if that becomes a problem for Aiden O'Connell.
Yeah. Tommy, your view on this and just in the whole role of this, it is a new world, and we're talking to these guys, and does it have an impact, or what level of impact, not just with Aiden O'Connell, but you talk to other coaches around the country, et cetera, that, we're all still trying to figure out some of this stuff out, and will it have any impact once we see the ball get kicked off?
I guess I don't think so. I mean, just like in the NFL, it's like any office. People make different amounts of money, right? I mean, not everybody on the NFL team makes the same amount of money, and they still go out and play football games and play their role. I think there is some concern still from coaches, since this is new to the college game, how this could impact your locker room. We see guys, football players at Purdue, retweeting things from other programs that they're doing.
Yeah,
I think there's a sense of where's mine? When am I going to get mine? And I think that's understandable. I think that's human nature. So again, that is a dynamic. I think it's new, and you don't want it to become a divisive force. And I'm sure that every school wants to keep their players happy. You always want to keep your people happy. So yeah, there's still a little bit of an unknown here to see how all this works out. And it's going to be fascinating to see what this does look like in 3 to 5 years. Is every Purdue player going to be making the same amount of money, at least a base minimum? Are we headed toward a union? On and on we go. We've all played this game on our head, right?
Yeah.
Where we're headed and what it could look like, and will they end up just being employees collectively bargained with the salary cap? So I think this is just the bare beginning here. But yeah, again, like I said, I think you do wonder as a coach. I would wonder, if I'm my offensive line coach and, my veteran who's been here busting his hump for 3 years has got nothing. And here comes an 18-year-old kid making $500,000. And what's my offensive lineman going to think?
Yeah.
So I think there's got to be a little bit of that would worry if you were a coach, maybe.
Yeah, no, I think it's a reality and still to be determined. All right, Brian, I want to touch a little bit on recruiting. Through you had a busy front end of July, and with COVID and recruiting, it's not been as easy here the last couple of weeks. But anything in terms of anything more on the basketball front? I know they have a number of visitors in August, but also as football recruiting, a very busy June for Jeff Brom and company. Any other things that to watch for in the upcoming week or two with respect to Purdue's recruiting front?
Yeah, time has run together for me. I don't even know what day it is. I think maybe like before August 1st, Purdue football hears from Kendrick Gilbert, the 4-star defensive tackle from Cathedral. I like Purdue's chances there, but I don't know if anything's been decided yet. I think, Purdue and Kentucky are probably ahead of LSU and Iowa. If I had to guess, that would be a really, really strong finish to a really outstanding defensive line class for Purdue, and a really big addition on top of what really on paper looks like a solid class. The one thing Jeff Brom's recruiting classes have always kind of been defined by is kind of like the star power, like those 3 or 4 guys per class that are so good athletically and have so much promise that they're going to walk in right away and help you. The David Bells, the Carl Loftuses, the Rondell Moores. I don't know if this class necessarily has that yet. The biggest star on paper in the class is a quarterback, and it's kind of hard to envision a quarterback, playing at Purdue right away. And I'm not necessarily saying Kendrick Gilbert would walk in right away and kind of be that game changer, but he would be, one of those kind of higher caliber sorts of recruits, at least in terms of the level they were recruited at, the level they're ranked at. Obviously, things are very difficult for defensive linemen walking in right away and making a huge impact, kind of things like that. On the basketball front, it's just, Purdue's continuing to work on Xavier Booker, seeing how much traction they can keep there while everybody in the country, comes after him, and kind of the nature of that recruitment changes a little bit. But they're further ahead in 2024 probably than they are in 2023 in that regard. I think zeroing in on Cannon Catchings to go along with Jack Benner to open up this 2024 class, getting the 2025 kids on campus finally starting August 1st, Trent Sisley, Jalen Harrelson, Malachi Marino, kind of people like that. They're going to have their elite camp at the end of the month next month. They're going to have lots of visitors, I'm sure, in August. They're going to have lots of junior official visits in fall. It's going to be a busier August probably than normal for Purdue basketball recruiting. So that's what I got.
I want to one thing we're going to revert back to media day because I want to get both of your guys. Mike Leach, obviously the head coach of Mississippi State. I got to keep track of that. It's always famous for being at media day and talking about ties. I think it was this week, and how he used it as napkins and going completely off the rails and not talking all about football. You guys have covered a number of these and over the years. Is there anybody in the Big Ten that is must or over the years, some of the favorite ones you've had on winning media day? In other words, being a guy that makes an impact on winning on media day that creates a national stirs. Maybe Jim Harbaugh. Tom, I'll start with you. Who do you expect to be? Or is there anybody in the Big Ten or over the years, guys, that you've covered that have been extra fun in this environment? Yeah,
he's the one guy, Alan. You hit the nail on the head. No shock there. He's a little offbeat. I know early on he wouldn't wear his jacket and tie, of course. And as we've seen from some recent comments from Harbaugh, he's not afraid to tell you what he thinks on any subject. And within the staid Big Ten footprint, boy, that's just not commonplace. Everybody usually stays pretty buttoned up in this conference, especially when you get on dais and you're speaking before the media and the public. So Jim Harbaugh definitely is a mold breaker from how he conducts himself and what he's willing to discuss on the record in a public forum. I can't recall anybody in the Big Ten even similar ilk since I've been going to these things. I've been to most media days in other leagues, and Mike Leach is another one. It's kind of a good way to diffuse topics. You can avoid having to talk about stuff you don't want to talk about.
Yeah,
go off on a tangent, right, and try to be the funny man. And it is sort of a kind of a fun experience when you get a head coach who sort of does go off script sometimes and does his own thing, so to speak.
Yeah, Jim is probably the closest one to Brian over the years. Anybody that, from a football standpoint, I'm trying to think of maybe Joe Till. I don't know. The Joe was always pretty buttoned up and never said stuff, but at least was kind of quotable. But is there anybody else in the league that over the years that jumps off the page in football that was really somebody that you just didn't know what the heck he was going to say?
Well, Tiller used to turn it into open mic night, and that's why people liked him. And that's why, it was kind of like when Tim Miles was at basketball media day, he'd go up there and
it was good.
You'd feel compelled to give him a tip when he was done because it was sheer entertainment. I'm always interested by the coaches who are around long enough to know the league, but also around long enough to not give a damn what they say. I think toward the end, I don't know if it's okay for me to say positive things about Joe Paterno and Bobby Knight. But I think those guys at Big Ten Media Day, when you'd ask them an issue question or something like that, they would tell you what they really think. I think Tom Izzo in basketball right now is that guy who, if there's something going on with college basketball that a lot of coaches would just kind of diplomatically word around, he's the guy who said, "This is stupid. What are we doing?" I think that Matt Painter's kind of getting there in terms of his credibility in the industry, in terms of how people view him as a prominent voice in college football or college basketball. Yeah. There's the brain fog for you. So it's kind of those guys who are really going to tell you what they think that I think are really valuable in these sorts of situations. The thing I don't like about the way Big Ten media days are going and conference media days in general are going is these things used to be so valuable to sit down next to the coach you cover and talk about who's really made a move at second team right guard right now. And you would start to get good off-season pieces of information from the coach that you don't see as much during the off-season than you do during the season. It was kind of that clearinghouse for really important day-to-day nuts and bolts stuff that aren't going to kind of win the press conference, so to speak, that people aren't going to care about. But this thing has become so much more into this scripted media event. And the news cycle nowadays is such where the one-liner at the podium steals headlines for a day. And that's pretty much it. And you just have more aggregators and more bloggers and more, less substantive coverage than you used to have. Everybody's behind a podium now, and any reporter in the country will tell you what you get from somebody at a podium versus this isn't necessarily a COVID thing. This was something I think that was happening before COVID. Any reporter will tell you what you get from an athlete or a coach from behind a podium is very, very different than what you would get sitting right next to them, having an actual meaningful human conversation with them. I just think I think these things have just become less substantive. They've become more about the tweet and the viral moment, and everybody kind of forgets about what was said the next day anyway. And people like me and Tom who go there to find out about that second team right guard tend to not find out as much about the second team right guard because that's just kind of the nature of the event nowadays. It's not nearly as, for lack of a better term, intimate as it used to be.
Yeah. I think Brian summed it up very well there. And the setup in Chicago was they had that big ballroom, and coach was at every table and a player was at every table, and it's almost like a cafeteria or buffet. And you could just kind of wander around and sidle up. And I think Brian makes a good point about just that, the physical setup, the podium, the formality of it. I think it does impact the type of answers people are apt to give, as opposed to being in a more conversational setting, sitting right next to them at a table, so to speak.
Yeah. It just seems too like the nature of media, where everybody's writing like the same story.
Yeah.
I think a good example of this is, like, it was just a couple of days ago, and obviously these national writers are doing their jobs. I'm not being critical of them, but I don't know if it was the Big 12 or the ACC, one or the other. The commissioner came up and said, we're, quote, open for business.
Yeah.
And then everybody's story, that was the headline and that was the tweet, and they were all out at the same time. It's like, what are we doing here? We're all writing the same story.
I'm getting news alerts on that even.
But that's kind of the nature of the event nowadays. It's like,
whatever
the thing that perks everybody up from the podium, everybody's writing the same story nowadays. And then 50 aggregators are aggregating it, and it's all gone in an hour, which is not, I don't think it's good for the reader. I don't think it's meaningful coverage as much as it used to be, but it's kind of the changing nature of the media landscape. It's also the product of the fact that what people don't understand about the media is that the media is a product of what people show they want, or what they are willing to consume. And, if people wanted in-depth, hashed out, flushed out coverage of these programs nowadays, I think you would have a lot more of it. If those things got clicked, if those things got subscribed to, more importantly, I think you would get a lot more of that, as opposed to the everybody writing the same story based off the same quote, and then it's showing up for free on 22 blogs and being retweeted by or aggregated by 22 Twitter accounts called collegefootballanalysis.com or something like that, with 8 followers. That's just kind of the nature of the fragmented media nowadays, and the this bizarro news cycle we all now operate in. So that's my manifesto on the nature of sports media in the year 2022, specifically Big Ten and conference media days.
Hey, real quick, guys. If you can believe it, it's the 25th anniversary of that 1997 season, Joe Tiller's debut. That's still one of my all-time favorite seasons for a lot of different reasons. And I got a chance to talk to Billy Dicken for about an hour yesterday, just to kind of get his thoughts. I'm going to try to get a story post the next couple of weeks, just sort of through his eyes, starting with Tiller's hire through the Oklahoma State game on that season, which was so magical for so many people and really set the table for a great 12-year run for Purdue, in a season that had so many highs, and boy, just to go from the depths of the Coletto era to that, I mean, it's a lot of fun. And Billy Dicken, you guys know Billy. He's a good storyteller, and he likes to talk. So, and he's doing well right now in his life as well.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that, because I find myself too often like using the Tiller era as my standard for comparison for what's come after him. And that was 25 years ago. And I still find myself viewing that as kind of like the blueprint for what's possible at Purdue and how you can do it at Purdue. And here I am, like, comparing things in the Jeff Brom era to things in the Joe Tiller era. Well, at Ohio State, you don't compare Ryan Day to John Cooper. And at Michigan, you don't compare Jim Harbaugh to Lloyd Carr. That still feels modern to me. But I guess it's not.
It's not, yeah.
But I had one question.
But it's better than comparing the Jeff Brom era to the Darrell Hazel era. So.
That is correct. That is correct. And there were similarities. 2017 and 1997. Obviously, 97 was more accomplished, but there was that crazy run of the of research. Now, one question, and this will tie this together, and for long time fans, I meant to ask you this earlier, Tom. Any chance that Milton Wright pulls a Brian Alford?
No, there's not. No, it's over, Alan. It's over.
Totally over. Okay, so because
Brian Alford, there was
Brian Alford, for context, was ineligible. Had to go to junior college in '96. Came back and played and was an All Big Ten receiver in '97. Thanks for.
He was great, man. Brian Alford was he's one of my all-time favorites. But no,
Milton is not going to happen for Milton. Okay.
No, there was at one point. I kind of got the feeling there's a point where there was maybe a very razor thin hope. I don't want to get into the reasons why.
Yeah, I understood.
But then I was followed up, I don't know, shortly thereafter, and was given the finale, I'm kind of led to believe, I guess, that it's over. And unfortunately, it's over for Milton. And I think Milton was given every opportunity to succeed. And, it's a story we see repeated countlessly by, heck, guys, you were in college. We were all in college with guys.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But anyway, it's unfortunate. Like Brian said earlier, it's unfortunate because what an opportunity for Milton, right? Could have been the alpha, could have been an All Big Ten receiver, could have really left his mark, maybe caught 100 passes this year, and now he's gone. So, it's just too bad for him on a lot of different levels, academically and, of course, football-wise. What's his next move? I have no idea.
Yeah.
Some guys just struggle in school. I mean, that's kind of the nature of college. I mean,
there's nothing wrong with that.
If anyone who's ever talked to Milton Wright knows he's an intelligent, engaging guy. He's got people skills. He's going to probably be successful one day, no matter what he does, because he's got that sort of presence to him.
Mm-hmm.
He was one of the nicest kids I think I've ever gone down to see during, in high school, one of the most engaging guys. It's some guys just struggle in school. That's kind of the nature of being students. Sometimes it's unfortunate for Purdue. It's unfortunate for Milton Wright. I think he would have been a really, really prominent player for them this year, if not like maybe even a borderline All-America type.
Mm-hmm.
But stuff happens.
I remember the game of Wrigley Field he had this year.
Terrific, wasn't he? Yeah,
he kind of gave you an idea what he was capable of, and that's one that really sticks with me. That day, Alan and I were up there and got to see Milton Wright just strut his stuff in the friendly confines. That was a lot of fun.
Well, I was glad to know that I never struggled in school. I was a 6.0 student back in the day on the 6.0 scale, but that is not true.
Guys, today I wouldn't even get into Purdue, so I've got no room to talk.
Oh, I wouldn't have gotten into Purdue if it weren't for that sweet New Jersey tuition.
Yeah, there you go. They like
had those coffers, and I just completely pulled a rabbit out of my hat on the SAT. That helped too.
Well, I think there's a reason behind that. There's intelligence for both of you. But
are you trying to say I cheated?
No. I said that you showed well on you're a smart guy. So
you are a smart guy. You're a smart guy.
Okay. But we wish Milton Wright the best, and I would agree. My one interview with Milton during fall camp, really engaging guy, and you wish him well. But sometimes things don't work out. But on that note, we're going to close this thing. We've enjoyed our conversation, and we hope you have too. And we'll have next week be back talking about the start of fall camp, and the fall camp will be starting on August 2nd, right? And but we'll have the rehash of media day and some other stuff as well. Want to thank our sponsor, the Union Club Hotel, the 811 Bistro Boiler Up Bar. We appreciate their support, and we all look forward to get things rolling as we head into the 2022 season, and all the news and information will be on the site upcoming with respect to that. So guys, have a great week, and we appreciate all of you for watching and listening, and however you consume our consumables, and we'll look forward to more of the same on our Saturday Simulcast next week. Take care.
If you're watching this on YouTube, like and subscribe.
Yes, if you
liked it. If you didn't like it, just
leave it alone. There you go.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good public service announcement that I need to make every week. But guys, thanks again, and have a good week all. All right.